I'm married to a wonderful man who loves Jesus more than he loves me.
That's so very, very sad.
Hello, you degenerate heathens. Today we're going to look at a video from PragerU called Why I'm No Longer an Atheist. I was going to react to this the day it came out, and shit happens. I dropped the ball on this one, but better late than never. So, I haven't seen this yet. I've seen a couple seconds, a little bit, but, so let's just get into it.
I had this God-sized hole in my heart. I was trying to fill it with other things and just leaving chaos in my wake.
What the hell does that mean? I had a God-sized hole in my heart? Does that mean you just... So you wanted to believe in God, and you were just... Okay. This is just a meaningless phrase, is my point. And I just don't know what are you trying to say here? I guess she'll clarify. We'll have more to go on.
My name is Adrienne John.
And I was leaving chaos in my wake without God. The idea of God is so empty. How does this provide anything other than giving up your responsibility to think for yourself?
Johnson, and this is my story.
Great.
I was raised by two loving secular parents. We didn't...
What is secular parents? Are you trying to say they're atheists? Or what does that mean? This has come up all the time now in like right-wing things, which is why I despise where the left is heading, but this is why I can never join the right wing, or especially the conservative, because they're so infested with religion. The left wing is infested with communism and moral relativism. The right wing is infested with religion, and frankly, not all of them. But you know, that's always true. A theocracy, theocrats. So I see nowadays, I don't know if this has been going on for a while, but the right-wingers attacking secularism as if that's the same as rejecting God, because secularism is what allows you to practice your religion, and the Jews to practice their religion, and the Baptists to practice their religion, and the Catholics to practice their religion. That's what America is all about, is, hey, we're keeping our hands off of the religious thing. We're not a church. We're not going to establish a church. We're not going to establish a religion. You have freedom of religion. The state's not going to comment on that. That's secularism. So what is this? What are secular parents? So they're not theocrats, is what you're saying? You were raised by non-theocrats. Great.
We didn't have God. We didn't have religion. We didn't really have a whole lot of moral structure or guidelines from a young age.
So that's not the same thing. Not having God and not having religion is not the same as not having moral guidelines. So what do you mean? You didn't have a book to demand what your moral guidelines are, so you don't have to think about it? And again, this doesn't answer whether they were God believers or not. Maybe they were God believers, but just didn't want to foist their belief on you as a child, which is the responsible way to raise children if you believe in God. So again, what is secularism? So you were raised by non-theocrats and non-child brainwashers. Is that what you're saying? And okay, maybe she. I'm 28 seconds in. Let's let her explain a little more about her lack of moral guidance.
Age, because I didn't have God, I know it may sound cliche, but I had this God-sized hole in my heart, and so I was trying to fill it with other things. And by the time I became 11, 12 years old, those other things that I was trying to fill that void with were being cool. And
yeah, it does sound cliche and stupid because it doesn't mean anything. what does it mean? So you needed God, or what did you actually need? You needed moral guidance? Okay, and she just said, I was trying to fill it with being cool. So I guess religious people can't be cool. Or what? That was what you worshipped, was being cool? Okay?
Being popular, and that meant drinking and doing drugs and getting piercings and getting tattoos.
Interesting. How did I, as an atheist, not have to fill the hole in my heart with being cool and drink? When I was in high school, I was like straight edge. Like, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs. How did I manage to do that and be an atheist at the same time? Huh. And I did that before I ever went to Christian school. And I chose to go to Christian school. I wasn't sent there by my parents, and it didn't change me. It didn't change any of my values. Going to Christian school made me an atheist. I was agnostic, like pure agnostic before then. I was like, maybe there is a God. That's when my eyes were opened to, oh, this is just mythology like everything else.
Tattoos and starting to be sexual with boys. So
Oh no! How can you possibly be sexual and believe in God at the same time? Oh, every kid at my school was banging each other and also believed in God. This is just so stupid. How? And the fact that religion precludes sex? This is one of the problems with the religion, is it's so anti-sex. It doesn't allow us to practice healthy sexuality. Even teenagers, they're gonna have those urges, period, end of story. That's how God made you, right? Why would God? So you just want to suppress it? That's not how it works. You don't just suddenly not have those urges just because you believe in God, or just because you're into God. No, the right way to do things is to practice healthy sexuality, not to suppress it.
So my parents, they pretty much let me do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And when I was 14, 15, 16, that seemed pretty great to me. I was having...
So maybe your parents were just not very strict enough and didn't give you enough boundaries. And that's the problem, not your atheism.
Having the time of my life. I didn't realize until much, much later how much damage that was doing to me. So
no, what you realized later was that you conflated lack of religion with lack of structure in the home.
So I didn't know anything about politics until I got to college. I did not care about politics when I was in high school. All I cared about in middle school and high school was having fun, being popular, drinking, drugs. When I got to college...
Yeah, just like all high schoolers, including religious ones, who are the majority of high schoolers.
I really wanted to have intellectual discussions with my professors and my peers. I decided that I wanted to be a sociology major. I wanted to learn about trends and demographics and how society functioned. I had no idea that sociology is really just the study of 3 words: racism, sexism, and oppression. If you just repeat those 3 words over and over again, you'll ace sociology.
Yeah, but what the hell does that have to do with religion? At all. Most of the people on the left are religious. All the people you hear complaining, almost like on TV, like Stephen Colbert, most of the people on the news, they all believe in God, and yet they are obsessed with this racist, critical race theory, applied principles, critical race applied principles. Remember this, CRAP, CRAP, because there's a difference between critical race theory taught as a college course and these exact same principles that they teach, which is everything is racism and oppression, applied at lower levels that aren't like strict legal theory. So, I digress. She clearly distracted me with this. What does this have to do with religion? Because I, as a strong atheist, that's why I left the left. Because I started to realize, oh, I'm in a cult. I'm in this racist cult of leftism that thinks everything is about race, and that leads to segregation and essentializing people on their racial characteristics, that because you're a black person you think this way and you have these experiences, and because you're a white person you think this certain way and have the experiences of always being privileged and always thinking that black people are beneath you, and all black people have the experience of not fitting in. This isn't the case in the real world. So I feel like I was uniquely able to realize what was happening to me because I'm constantly questioning everything. Not because I'm an atheist, but I'm an atheist because of those very same traits within me. That's how I broke out of communism, because I realized I was in a cult. So really, I don't see why religion has to be the exact opposite of wokeism, because they're not, because wokeism is a religion. It's the same thing. They both have extreme dogma, and I just produced a video going into like the gender politics, and it's the dogma. The religious thinking is strikingly similar. It's like horseshoe theory. It's they just put all their trust in this higher thing, and they look through everything through that lens, and they're not able to break out of that fundamentalist attitude. They're not able to question themselves. They don't want to have dialogue. They just want to preach. If you don't buy the dogma, then you're inherently against us and an evil person. You either hate black people or LGBT people, or you're on our side and maybe you just don't quite know how to submit yet. If you're questioning, same thing as religious people, either you're with the devil or you're on our side, and if you have questions, maybe you just haven't submitted to God quite enough yet. Or God is God because he told me he's God. And the Bible is true because the Bible says it's true. And, oh, well, this lived experience is true because the black people say it's true, even though there's other black people who disagree. But lived experience, if you say it's true, then it's true. Or if you say you're a third gender, then that means that it's true. If you simply say you're a man, that makes you a man. It's the same as the Bible says it's true. So these are the same thing. Having a religion is not an antidote to wokeism, because they are the same thing. It's the same thought process, just a different God.
My professors would say things like, America is founded on racism. And I would sit in the class and I would go, I don't think that's right. But if I don't think that's true, then what is it that I believe? And so I had to go do.
Yeah, it's not true. America was founded on secularism. Go figure.
My own research. So now I had both sides of an argument, and I started learning about this is what it means to be on the left. This is what it is to be liberal. This is what it is to be conservative. This is what it means to be libertarian. Oh, okay, well, in that case, I guess I'm a libertarian conservative. So when I was a senior, I got to pick whatever topic I wanted to study for an entire year. So I picked to study the topic, the liberal bias in academia. My professor...
Again, it's absolutely true. There's a liberal bias in academia and media. And, well, at least neoliberal. Actually, there's a leftist bias. Liberal is libertarian. It's the same thing. But people confuse these terms because you should be a liberal. You should not be a leftist. And liberal does not mean that you're woke. But again, I'm trying not to get distracted by the politics of this, because, of course, she's going to tie it to religion.
was not happy about that. I was the only student in my program who was denied funding. All of the other students were given grants from the university, and they had very...
So, to be fair, I took a science education class, and our teacher actually acknowledged there is a left-wing bias in academia, and I don't think she was a right-winger, but by any means, but it was part of a larger curriculum. We were trying to pull together like how students learn in a classroom setting, and there was part of the research that we wanted to focus on maybe political biases, and there were other things. There were, racial bias and stuff like that. Of course, I volunteered to do the political bias thing. There were some very typically leftist students in the class who were like, there's no bias. Of course, they were the most biased of all people. So it's deliciously ironic that the people who are enforcing the bias are saying that there is no bias. I digress. So there is some recognition by some fair people, but overall, yes, there is this bias, and it's extremely frustrating. It's but oh god, she's got me again. Let's see what this has to do with religion.
Very liberal topics. They were very confused by me because when I was a senior at UC Santa Barbara, I had spiked purple hair, I had a tongue ring, I had tattoos, and I would open my mouth and loudly defend capitalism and, be a libertarian and say I'm a conservative. And they would look at me and they would go, you don't look like a conservative. And I would say, well, what am I supposed to look like? Am I supposed to have a tennis racket and a pair of golf clubs and a polo shirt?
And this is why she's no longer an atheist, folks, because left-wingers are bigots. Okay.
I didn't understand why I couldn't look the way that I did and still be a conservative. I then went to graduate school and I met my ex-husband. After my ex-husband and I got married, I thought that would make me happy. I was still always trying to fill this void, and I thought that he could complete me and make me whole and make me happy, and he could.
So you were an atheist at this point? You were a full-on conservative, but you weren't, and you didn't say your parents were atheists. You're still not saying you were an atheist. I'm not tracking this conversation.
Couldn't, because no one can. I didn't have that realization at the time, unfortunately. I just thought, oh, well, I'm with the wrong person. So if I find another person, then he'll complete me and he'll make me happy and he'll make me whole. I was unfaithful.
No, you need Jesus inside of you.
In my marriage. My destructive behavior caused my ex-husband to say, I cannot let you do this to me anymore, and I'm leaving you. And
what destructive behavior? And how is it related to atheism? This is so vague.
Then I hit rock bottom. What have I done? I just threw away my entire life. All I did was cry and say, it's so hard, I'm in so much pain, and I just want someone to save me. But nobody could. After
only Jesus can save me.
Years of playing a victim, of being in therapy, of taking medication, of complaining, but never
playing victim. Let's talk about playing victim. Okay? Who plays victim more than Christians and their victimhood narrative? Oh, we're so oppressed. Oh, we're oppressed because we're not allowed to have a theocracy. Oh, I mean, the wokeists probably do play more victim, but you're in pretty much a tie for victimhood status.
For actually taking ownership for my life, I realized, oh, I have to do something different in order to make a change.
And so the change wasn't, I don't know, psychotherapy, figure out what this destructive behavior is. I guess the change is believe in a magical man in the sky who can magically save you just by believing in him.
I started going to self-help groups for people who struggled with sex and love addiction. There was really no other alternative. So I went to these meetings, I went to these groups, and I asked for help. I met someone there who was
So you're in a desperate position, and someone comes along and preys on you, and you'll try anything. I see where this is going.
willing to sort of take me on and be a mentor. And I
Recruit you for the cult.
asked, will you help me? And she said, yeah, I can help you. Read this book, write these journal entries, write down your story, and you need to get some kind of spiritual practice. I don't care what it is. At first, it made me uncomfortable.
Okay, fair enough. You need to get some kind of spiritual practice. Well, yes and no. Most people's conception of spirituality is believe in some god or higher power, but that's absolutely stunted. It doesn't get you anywhere because none of those spiritualities, quote unquote, actually connect you to reality. It connects you to a fiction without actually seeing the meaning of the fiction. Mythology is more meaningful as mythology than as history, right? Because if the value you're getting from the mythology is this god actually literally fought this other god at this location, it means nothing. But if you're looking at, what is the struggle between this god and whatever, if you're looking at what is the actual struggle, the actual meaning, the allegory or the metaphor or the applicability behind this story, that's where the spirituality comes from. Connecting yourself to the wider universe, to the realization that you're not actually separate from the universe. That's true spirituality. And religion can kind of approach that, but it stops the buck at Jesus saved you so you can live forever. And then that's it. You don't get any more. There's no nutritional value to these beliefs.
But the more I did it, the more I saw that there was something to this God thing. As I'm going through
Like what?
this extremely painful spiritual transformation, a friend of
And what did you choose? Did you perhaps choose the religion that everyone around you in your culture had? Or did you go searching around the world for religions? Or did you do the one that was ingrained into your brain as a child? That everyone around you had because of your particular region, which has nothing to do with the truth of it.
mine invited me to see a play of the Screw Tape Letters. And I opened up the program, what's this about? And the characters are God, the devil. I was like, what? What is this? What am I about to watch? It hit.
I knew about the Screw Tape Letters in middle school. Maybe I'm being elitist, but this someone who's interested in this stuff probably should not be coming around to this after grad school, after they've been divorced. I mean, it seems like you might come across this before if you were at all interested.
Me so deeply. I had been on this spiritual journey for a year at this point. And when I saw this play of the Screw Tape Letters with Max McLean, it blew me away. It's like resonating within me so powerfully that I had to at least consider the option of Christianity, which as a former...
Yeah, so the culture around you in your particular region made you consider Christianity. It's not like you watched a bunch of plays from Hinduism, Shintoism, Buddhism, Islam. No. You happen to see a play about Christianity because you're in a culture of Christians and you go, I'll consider Christianity out of all of the religions. That's not biased at all. So she saw a play about a demon mentoring another demon in how to tempt people and like ruin their life, basically. And she's like, I ruined my life. I guess this particular mythology must be literally true. Instead of looking at, C.S. Lewis was an actual Christian, and it is a Christian apologetic. But see, the meaning is sapped from it when you're like, oh, so it's not that I was engaging in behaviors that are inherently harmful and these behaviors can be tempting on their own. No, it's that there's a little demon on my shoulder or in my head that's mind controlling me to do these things because I don't have the shield of God in my head, as if that's going to at all inform you how to actually turn your life around.
Atheist is the most uncomfortable, ridiculous thing to consider. I knew that God was the answer, and I wasn't quite getting it with the yoga and all of those things. There was something else that I wanted.
Yeah, because yoga, seriously, yoga as a spiritual practice, yes, there's some spiritual aspect to it. But if you think yoga's going to turn your life around, it's just as empty as Christianity. But it doesn't have that story that resonates with you because you weren't raised with Hindu practices. And by the way, Christians way overplay the mythological aspects of yoga. Yoga is like a physical practice that's supposed to be a little bit spiritual. You can strip the spirituality from it, but it's founded in like, oh, the chakras and the energy, the kundalini energy, and they think that inherently if you engage in yoga, like some of the more fundy people, if you engage in yoga, you're inherently praying to these demons who are masquerading as Hindu gods. That's pretty stupid. But how is Christianity any less spiritually bankrupt than all of these other features? Oh, it's because the mythology is ingrained in her as a child because of the region she was raised in, and so when she hears two demons communicating with each other in this play, and the characters of God and you know, these characters resonate with her because these are the characters she knows from being raised with it. It's not that there's some inherent better truth. She's not even explored. It's not possible for her to have these connections with the other religions. It's not that they're true. It's that she has a background knowledge of them, and so this is reinforced in her psychology when she sees some meaning in a work of fiction.
I didn't have like a moment where I became a Christian, but I remember one morning getting ready for work. My whole life was so different than it had been just a few years ago. I couldn't believe the person I was becoming. And somehow this thought occurred to me that if someone asked, "Are you a Christian?" I'd have to say yes at this point.
What did you actually do that changed your life? What is actually different because of your beliefs? How connects the dots? What belief, or consideration of belief in Christianity led to you actually changing your actions? Or is it just correlated with all of your efforts to change your life, and it just so happened that you kind of bundled that up with Christianity because there are some changes naturally occurring, you're making efforts, you're also warming up to Christianity at the same time, so you think that correlation is causation when it's not.
I'm a Christian now. I believe in Jesus. And I found a church in Los Angeles, and
Why? Why would you believe that Jesus was resurrected just because you saw a play? How does this connect? You're just listing off a series of events that have no connection to each other, and it seems like there's a lot of gaps in your story too.
Walk in and I see this guy across the room. We're immediately attracted to each other, that I was not ready yet to date. So for a while, we were in this community group together where we would read the Bible together. We would pray for each other. I even told this
If I was a Christian, I would find praying for people to be just abhorrently disrespectful to God. The point of prayer might be to have a conversation with God, but if you're asking God to do something, Does God need your help in reminding him what his own will is? If he wants to help this other person, does he need you to remind him or to ask for it? How profoundly disrespectful is that action? That's just something that bothers me.
Group when I was gonna go make amends to my ex-husband. I met him in person and took ownership and responsibility for my part in everything and apologized
And you can't do that if you're an atheist somehow.
for all of the harm that I had caused him. God had transformed me, and it was like,
So what are you saying? Just believing in Jesus means that God mind controlled you and took away the things that you were doing, your beliefs or your habits? What is actually happening here?
that chapter of my life came to a close. And then I was ready to date my new my new husband. I'm married to a wonderful man who loves Jesus more than he loves me. And we have
Wow, that's quite a brag right there. Your life partner who's there for you every step of the way loves a fictional character that has never showed up in his life more than you. And you're like, oh, such a great relationship that he prioritizes mythology more than me. This is how we get institutionally racist, divinely sanctioned genocide and slavery, like in the Bible. This is how we get jihad. This is how we get the Inquisition. This is how we get one church killing members of another slightly different denomination. This is how we get terrorism in the name of God. This is how we get cults and cult abuse. When you love something more than your loved ones, your friends and your family, more than you love yourself, more than you love your life partner, more than you love your children, you open yourself up to total mind control. Because forget a world where this God actually tells you himself to do something and you blindly follow. That's bad. But in reality, you're blindly following the dictates of selfish, corrupt men who claim to speak for this silent God. This is the perfect recipe for war and destruction and cults and murder and abuse, because you will never, ever, ever look at the people you're hurting in the name of this silent God, even if they're your family. You will always prioritize this vague, absent God over the people you should actually be looking out for, including yourself. It's a sickness.
two amazing children together, and I
Do you love Jesus more than your children too? How awful. This is why I prefer J.R.R. Tolkien over C.S. Lewis. And Screwtape Letters was dedicated to J.R.R. Tolkien because they kind of had a disagreement. Tolkien, he said The Lord of the Rings was an explicitly Catholic work. And yet Lord of the Rings, I might like it even more than, you guys know I like Star Wars. But Tolkien said it's not about believing in Jesus and thus you're saved. It's about having faith in each other as humans. Your love for each other is what's godly, is what's spiritual. And so this is how Christianity can't, even though Tolkien was a Christian and says he was inspired by Christianity, that's a mature way of approaching religion.
The Lord of the Rings takes place in a pre-Christian world, which is why we don't see any characters praying for miracles or divine intervention. We don't see them praising or worshipping Ilúvatar. And this was important for Tolkien as he didn't want the story to be allegorical. He wanted it to be mythological. He wanted it to reflect a deeper, universal truth. The difference is best explained in his own words. I think that many confuse applicability with allegory, but the one resides in the freedom of the reader and the other in the purpose domination of the author. We find this applicability in the simple fact that although one can find and be inspired by Ilúvatar's existence, it's not necessary to believe in or even know about his presence to reach the same deeper meanings of the Lord of the Rings. What matters is that Ilúvatar's flame imperishable, his divine light, his hope, exists within the hearts of all his creations. Therefore, what ultimately drives them is not a faith in God, but a faith in each other.
The fellowship has failed.
What if we hold true to each other?
And it isn't Christian values. Christianity does not own those values. Just because religions adopt truths from the world and people associate these truths with the religion they learned it from does not mean they're fundamentally religious values. But what she's describing as is a toxic Christianity where you love the mythological characters more than the people who are in the trenches with you. Tolkien is all about having faith in the people in your life. Your significant other, your children, your friends, your family. Those relationships are what God exists through and what gives glory to God. Not actually just knowing the correct name of God and praying to it. That's irrelevant. That's stunted. J.R.R. Tolkien understood this. C.S. Lewis did not.
Never thought any of this was possible for me. I thought when I hit bottom, well, that's it. I ruined my chance at happiness. I'm never going to have any of that. And then when I became
because I was an atheist. It was not because you were an atheist. It was because you were engaging in certain behaviors which you declined to actually discuss.
Christian, I thought, what nice Christian guy is going to want these damaged goods? A divorced, adulterous, former atheist covered in tattoos.
Okay, so it seems like she said she was addicted to sex. She seems like she probably cheated on her husband. You don't need to be a Christian to not cheat on your spouse. So, sounds like maybe this is the fault of toxic sexuality in Christianity and in culture widely. I think that the expectations for monogamy are kind of toxic. Not that I don't think monogamy is toxic. A lot of people prefer monogamy, and that's their choice, and that's fine. But a lot of people aren't built for it. You shouldn't. So it's toxic that people expect you to not have attractions to other people if you have a partner. And, if you have those attractions, it's going to be hard to not act on that. There's nothing wrong with having like a polyamorous, or I don't know what the strict terms are, like a swinging relationship. Society needs to be more open to that, because I believe that a lot of relationships are destroyed because people have these desires. End of story. That's like, you're not going to get rid of the desires. So what happens is they end up suppressing them and pushing them down, and yet they come back up anyway. People act on their desires. That's just a fact. So I think we need to mature as a society and get used to the fact that these desires exist, and know that if you want to go have sex with someone else, maybe even share sexuality with another couple, I don't care, I don't know. That doesn't mean that you're less in love with your spouse. Maybe you just matured. Maybe he wasn't the right guy for you. Maybe monogamy wasn't right for you. Maybe monogamy wasn't right for you at the time. You'll never know, because you've blamed all of this on some empty God. You'll never even know the changes God made in you because you think it's automatic. You'll never explore and know what actually went wrong. You're just going, the only thing you can teach other people is join my cult, and the bad stuff will just magically go away. But we have a very immature view of sexuality, and that's very much influenced by Judeo-Christian values. That's the strongest influence, I would say, on our American values, our Western values at least. And it's a negative one. So I'm fairly confident she's not going to explain how God made her stop cheating. I doubt that her desires are gone, or maybe it's just the fact that, she built up this habit of having sex with whoever she wants, and she was able to stop that habit at the same time as she was coming to Christianity, and so she ties them together erroneously. I'm not sure what's happening here. She's not really explaining it.
And God was like, don't worry, honey. I've got this total weirdo picked out for you. This other Christian guy who's also...
So God, how does God make sure that the right person is at the right place at the right time? And how does he take your sex addiction away? Because it sounds like you were working on yourself before you actually realized you were a Christian. But if God actually did this, it requires a lot of mind control, which is the taking away of free will, which is a major apologetic of Christianity. So it's not making a whole lot of sense.
Covered in tattoos and has plugs in his earlobes. Our God is the God of a million second chances, and he can work with anything as long as you give it to him.
You could have done that without God. Sorry.
I am satisfied in God unlike anything in this whole world can ever and will ever satisfy me.
Sounds like you're, it's like the opposite of thou doth protest too much. You affirm too much. Seems like maybe you're trying to convince yourself that it's satisfying enough. But, really, I think what's happening is she figured some stuff out, and she's calling it God. So she's calling life improvement God. And yes, I get that you'd be satisfied with that. But I'm sure you still have that hole in your heart because, at least a little bit, because God does not help you figure out the actual fundamentals of why your life changed. You're just, at this point, just giving up control to this God, which doesn't actually exist. So, even if he did exist, you're just giving up your agency to a God. So what's the point in that? You're not actually learning a lesson. You're just following directions. In reality, there is no God. So again, you're not learning a lesson. You're just following directions, which can help because it will help you. First of all, fear is a major motivator. If you're afraid of going to hell, it might change your behavior. Not the healthiest way to do so, but again, you're not actually learning the reasons and the behaviors. You're just following directions and creating new habits, which you could do from anything. You could substitute God for literally almost anything, and it would be the same. So this is not an intellectual pursuit that she's on. This has nothing to do with atheism.
I can never get it from another person. I can't get it from my status. I can't get it from money. I can't get it.
You did get it from another person because guess what? God didn't come down and do anything for you. Everything you know about God came from another person doing his work for him because he can't be bothered to actually come down and do it. Screw Tape Letters, Your Turning Point, written by a person, performed by people.
From how I look, I can't get it from anything. But with God, I am fully satisfied.
Seems like you're actually satisfied with what you think God gave you. You wouldn't be satisfied with God without the results and the changes that you attribute to God. You're just repeating this dogma of God is enough at this point. You're just repeating it blindly. How do I know this? Because you abandoned atheism because according to you, it could not bring the changes and the results in your life that you attribute to God. Even though you've explained nowhere how this change occurred or why you can't do the same actions with atheism, you just say you needed God because you needed God. A God-sized hole in your heart, it's just a circular argument and an utterly meaningless turn of phrase. You're satisfied with what you apparently got out of your conversion. God being a stand-in for improving her life. So, yeah, you can get it from those same actions you performed, which are possible to be done from any religion or from atheism, which I would argue is better done in atheism because you're not placing an idol, placing blame, good blame, on a God for the positive changes. With atheism, you actually might have to look at the actual variables that actually changed.
There were a few years when I really did step away from politics. Politics had been my religion for so long that I needed to step away from it when I discovered my true religion and my God. When I came back to it and I was on PragerU's website and I was just kind of clicking around and I saw a tab that said, "Come work for us." I used to work in the corporate legal world and I really enjoyed it. It was really intellectually stimulating. But oh my gosh, if I could work for PragerU, that would be like a dream come true. I left the legal world and the corporate world behind so that I could try to help save America. I wake up.
And what does this have to do with religion? Because you can't have good politics unless you have God? What?
Every day grateful for my life. I was so desperate. And now I'm here. I have my.
You were desperate, so you would cling to anything even associated with anything that made you feel better. Correlation, not causation.
Dream job. I'm married to the man of my dreams. I have 2 amazing, beautiful children that I love.
Notice how it's all material things happening in her life. She's not... God is like a proxy for these things, but then she's giving all the credit and all the love to God, even though it's actually the things that she's getting that she's grateful for, that she did the work for, not God. I mean, give yourself some dang credit. You worked hard to get to this point. Other people have value, but you're giving all this credit to a magical man in the sky who in reality did nothing. In the fantasy, he mind controlled people to come into your life at the right time in the right place, rather than mind controlled you to take away your destructive behaviors that you struggled with, that he created with and gave you in the first place. And he also withheld his saving grace from you until you submitted to the right name of the right God. What a stand-up psychopath.
I have a wonderful life, but it's not because of anything I did other than
Wow.
becoming willing.
So you did... It's not because of anything I did other than becoming willing. This is so toxic because it takes away your free will, both literally and theologically. It takes away your will to make your own decisions, the responsibility to improve your own life. You give that up to a God that, at best, gets filtered through mere humans with their own agendas. You give up doing anything on your own, just believe the right thing, and it will magically fix itself, which, at best, is just a placebo effect. It stops you from figuring out what's really wrong with you, because it says the only thing that you're doing wrong is believing the wrong things about God. And the solution is blindly follow some random preacher from some random religion, usually the one you happen to be raised around, preachers that claim to speak for God, people who at best do not care for you as a person. Their number one priority is just for you to join the cult, whose only suggestion to any and all of your problems is to join and stay in the cult, and no matter what, keep reaffirming your loyalty to the cult and the cult leader, the dead cult leader, Jesus, above all else. Which opens you up to following living cult leaders who claim to speak for this divine presence. This is very toxic beliefs right here. You did the work. You went, and yes, being willing is the first step. And so what you're saying is, whatever God did to you, you couldn't have worked on your own. You couldn't have done on your own. So you're confirming mind control. But it's not in being receptive to God that you started on your journey to do work. Like you said, things were improving before you acknowledged you were a Christian.
I became willing to take responsibility, to do the next right thing.
Right. Do the right thing, not believe the right thing.
To follow God, to seek God.
Oh, okay.
He did amazing things with my life.
So, I thought the whole point of free will was so that we're responsible for our own lives, and yet we're supposed to have free will so that we can give up our free will to let God do amazing things with our lives. This is such garbled nonsense.
For somebody out there who's feeling like they're in the pit of despair, I would just say it's never too late. It's never, ever, ever too late. You are never too far gone. I know what it's like to feel completely hopeless and to feel like you're completely at the end and to feel like this pain is going to kill you and destroy you. It won't unless you let it.
For someone out there in the pit of despair, what I would say is you have the power to change yourself, because it's not God who's going to do it for you. Even if God is wielding you, it's within your power to do the same things that God is supposedly doing in your life. You have the power to make the same decisions as this God would have you do, all on your own. It is your agency that is primary here. I think that it would make me more in despair if I thought it's hopeless, I can do nothing, only a supernatural being who's mind controlling me is, in the case of demons, responsible for my shortcomings, and in the case of God, responsible for improving my life. No, you have the power. Your despair is not the end of the line, because you always have the power. You don't have absolute power. You don't get to decide what cards you're dealt. You get to decide what you do with the cards.
All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
So, that is good advice to someone who's in despair. Not, hey, you're desperate and willing to try anything. How about you try God? That's not going to help you. Not in the long run. It's going to stunt you. It might get you halfway there, but if you realize what's actually happening when you're halfway there, you're going to get the fundamental tricks of the trade. What is actually improving, what you can actually do, the actual decisions, the actual knowledge of how things work. And it doesn't matter whether it's God or not, because the knowledge and the truth that God would supposedly provide is out there already. You don't have to wait around for a God to gift it to you. It's in your hands.
Just have to be willing and let Him take over. That's
what it is. Let God take over. It's giving up your agency, which if you're in a place of despair, you just want to give up, but don't give up the one thing you have left. Okay? Your agency is everything. Your agency is what's actually going to change things. Don't give it up to someone else. And just in general, this is such a toxic way of being. It's just turning your brain off. Before she was all about just questioning the narrative, etc., etc. But then she rubber banded back to this: just accept it, just do as you're told, just let this higher thing take over. This is exactly the mentality of the wokies. They're just doing as they're told. I'm sure she's anti-vaccine mandates. All of them. All the people who are like virtue signaling about the vaccine, they're just doing as they're told. They're just wanting the government to pat them on the head, and it's not coming. I'm not. Let me be clear. I'm not anti-vax. I'm critiquing her position. I'm anti-mandates, but those are all ending anyway, because as they should, as the science will dictate. Anyway, I digress. I don't mean to start a whole thing about that. But the point is, she's all about opposing all these things where people are just turning off their brains, and yet her light bulb moment is turning off her brain. Literally, she said that.
And let him take over what I did. And he completely changed my life.
So that was, that actually convinced me more to be an atheist. So thanks for an absolutely worthless piece of crap story that has no factual basis in reality. I think these kind of stories are really irresponsible because they want you to give up control to God, which actually is humans speaking for God, and they prey on the desperate. And what it does is it sidesteps and scapegoats the actual, real, tangible lessons that you can learn and gives it up to this empty vessel called God so it stunts your actual understanding of how you can really change. You're just giving it up to this empty placeholder that you call God, which as a placeholder cannot teach you the true meaning behind or the true knowledge and methods behind what you need to really change your life. The buck stops there. You can't continue. You don't get to appreciate the true principles behind what is actually happening. You just give it all up to this empty placeholder. That's what God is dead means. The concept of God is no longer a viable spiritual concept. All it does is prevent you from seeing past the true meaning of a mythology by putting your focus on this character of God being literally true rather than the lessons the character can teach being true. So, that's my response. This was horrible. This will not convince anyone. I'm sad that this lady can't actually continue her journey of self-improvement, that it just stops at Jesus. Anyway, have a good one. God bless.